Hi, I am Anna. I come from www.ntvforex.com. Fed expected to maintain dovish tone at upcoming meeting analysis. http ntvforex.com News ID CE1F88 7/29/2020 10:52:21 AM. Notes Observations. U.S. Congress far apart on further stimulus measures. Fed expected to keep policy steady but maintain an accommodative stance. Asia. Australia Q2 CPI data registered its largest QQ decline in the data 7-decade history. QQ 1.9% v 2.0% EYY 0.3% v 0.5% E. Fitch affirmed Japan sovereign rating at A but lowered its outlook to negative from stable. Japan Ministry of Finance MOF senior official FX stability was important, watching market with sense of urgency. No comment of current FX levels. Japan government said to forecast FY 2021 GDP contraction of 4.5% similar to BOJ FY 2021 GDP forecast of 4.7%. Coronavirus. Total global cases 16,670,063 1.5% DD. Total deaths 659.1 K 0.9% DD. Australia PM Morrison Victoria coronavirus cases are impacting the domestic economy. Japan saw 982 new coronavirus cases on Tuesday. Hong Kong Chief Exec Lam warned the city was verge of large-scale community outbreak, hospitals facing collapse as they try to cope with sharp rise in virus case. Americas. U.S. House Speaker Pelosi GOP stimulus bill unlikely to pass in Senate believes McConnell not ready to make U.S. coronavirus relief deal. Senate Majority Leader McConnell said to not prepared to bring coronavirus aid bill to Senate floor without liability protections. Energy. Weekly API crude oil inventories 6.8 MV 7.5 M. Prior note oil prices are little changed on demand concerns tied to COVID-19. Speakers fixed income FX commodities erratum. Equities. Indices STOXX 6000 0.05% at 368.04, FTSE 0.27% at 6145.95, DAX 0.25% at 12,803.05, CAC 40 0.75% at 4,965.94, IBEX 35 0.46% at 7,213.00, FTSE MIB 0.64% at 19,774.50, SME 0.13% at 10,263.50, S&P 500 futures 0.03%. Market focal points. Key themes. European indices open mixed and failing to make headway as the session wore on. Better performing sectors lead by consumer discretionary energy and materials sectors. Among underperformers, Sanofi and GlaxoSmithKline to supply 60 m doses of COVID vaccine to the UK. Roche Actemra study in COVID-related pneumonia fails to meet endpoint. Majority of UBI holders except Intesa offer. Earnings expected in the upcoming US session include Boeing, General Motors, Spotify and General Electric. Equities. Consumer discretionary Puma PUM.DE 4% earnings, Next NXT.UK 7% trading update, Schneider Electric SU.FR 5% earnings. Financials. Deutsche Bank DBK.DE 1% earnings, Barclays Bark.UK 3.5% earnings, Banco Santander SAN.ES 3.5% earnings. Healthcare. Sanofi SAN.FR 2% earnings, Roche ROG.CH 1% trial data. Industrials. BASF BAS.DE 5.5% earnings. Technology. Capgemini CAP.FR 2% earnings. Materials. Rio Tinto RIO.UK 1.5% earnings. Speakers. ECB's Stornaras Greece reiterated stance that ECB would use all of its pandemic bond envelope as risks in region remain to the downside. Exit from PEP to depend on inflation outlook. Extending banking sector dividend ban to depend on virus outlook. Note current recommendation is until end of 2020. ECB's Herodotus Cyprus reiterated Council view that risks to outlook remain to the downside, could act again if inflation outlook worsened. Bo Haldane, chief economist, North East of England region, noting of a rapid rebound since May. Turkey Central Bank CBRT Gov quarterly inflation report press conference noted that pandemic measures were hurting supply chains, which was driving inflation higher. Turkey Central Bank CBRT quarterly inflation report raised its 2020 CPI from 7.4% to 8.9% and raised its 2021 CPI from 5.4% to 6.2%. BOJ DEP Gov Amami reiterated BOJ stance that would ease more if necessary. High uncertainty how pandemic would affect both markets and economy. Inflation likely to gradually accelerate but hard to envision hitting 2% target in current 3-year horizon. Reiterated stance that BOJ bond buying was not to finance government debt, providing liquidity was the basic role. Thailand Central Bank bought Assistant Gov Aram D trying to manage THB currency bought to prevent excessive volatility. Currencies fixed income. USD index at 2-year lows. Dealers noted that Goldman Sachs warned of real concerns about the USD reserve status, citing soaring debt and rising political and social uncertainty. Goldman raised 12-month gold forecast from $2,000 ounce to $2,300 ounce. Overall markets remained focused on the U.S. economic situation and hotspots of the coronavirus outbreak. Dealers pondered if the U.S. could get the situation under control with targeted and regional measures rather than widespread lockdowns. Then any summer pause in the recovery could be offset by a stronger fiscal stimulus. Fed expected to keep policy steady but maintain an accommodative stance at its meeting later today. Euro USD edging closer to the 1.18 level. USD JPY declined to a 5-month low at 104.80. JPY currency unable to weaken despite Fitch cutting the outlook on Japan's sovereign debt rating to negative. Economic data. The Germany June import price index 0.6% v 0.5% EYY 5.1% v 5.1% E. ZA South Africa June M3 money supply YY 11.1% v 10.6% prior. Private sector credit YY 5.6% v 6.5% E. FR France July consumer confidence 94 v 99 E. ES Spain June adjusted retail sales YY 4.7% v 18.9% prior. Retail sales UNA YY 3.3% v 20.1% prior. SE Sweden July consumer confidence index 83.3 v 84.1 prior. Manufacturing confidence 95.7 v 89.9 prior. Economic tendency survey 83.4 v 75.3 prior. Hungary June unemployment rate 4.6% v 4.7% E. TR Turkey June trade balance $2.9 billion v $3.1 b. IT Italy June PPI 0.7% v 0.3% prior. YY 6.1% v 7.2% prior. CH Swiss July credit Swiss expectations survey 42.4 v 48.7 prior. At Austria July manufacturing PMI 55.0 v 46.5 prior. First expansion in 5 months. ZA South Africa June CPI 0.5% v 0.4% EYY 2.2% v 2.2% E. Second straight month below target range. ZA South Africa June CPI core 0.3% v 0.1% EYY 3.0% v 2.7% E. UK June net consumer credit 0.1 BV 2.0 B prior. Net lending 1.9 BV 1.5 B. UK June mortgage approvals 40.0 KV 35.0 K. UK June M4 money supply 1.0% v 2.1% prior. YY 13.1% v 11.9% prior. M4 XIOFCs 19.8% v 31.2% prior. HK Hong Kong Q2 advanced GDP 0.1% v 0.5% E. Fifth straight contraction YY 9.0% v 8.2% E. IT Italy June hourly wages 0.1% v 0.1% prior. YY 0.6% v 0.7% prior. Fixed income issuance. In India, sold total INR 350 versus INR 350 indicated in 3-month, 6-month, and 12-month bills. SE Sweden sold total 5.0 billion Swedish kronor versus 5.0 billion Swedish kronor indicated in 2025 and 2031 bonds. UK DMO sold 3.5 B in 0.125% January 2023 gilts average yield 0.088% v 0.034% prior bid to cover 2.18x v 2.16x prior tails 0.7 bps v 0.5 bps prior. IT Italy debt agency Tesoro sold 7.0 B versus 7.0 B indicated in 6-month bills average yield 0.276% v 0.266% prior bid to cover 1.78x v 2.06x prior. Looking ahead. 0530 to Germany to sell 3.5 B in 1.25% May 2035 bunds. 0530 GR Greece debt agency PDMA to sell 26-week bills. 0530 EU ECB allotment in 3-month LTRO. 0530 ZA South Africa announces details of next bond auction held on Tuesdays. 0600 PT Portugal June retail sales no ESTV 13.1% prior YY no ESTV 13.1% prior. 0630 EU EFSF to sell 1.0 B in 0.625% October 2026 bonds average yield percent bid to cover X syndicated on March 10, 2020. 0630 UK DMO to sell 2.75 B in 1.625% October 2028 gilt average yield percent v 0.112% prior bid to cover X v 2.56x prior tails BPS v 0.3 BPS prior May 5, 2020. 0600 RU Russia to sell OFZ bonds. 0700 US MBA mortgage applications WE July 24 no ESTV 4.1% prior. 0700 UK weekly PM question time in house. 0800 BR Brazil June national unemployment rate 13.3% EV 12.9% prior. 0800 UK daily Baltic dry bulk index. 0830 US June advance goods trade balance $75.4 BV $74.3 billion prior. 0830 US June preliminary wholesale inventories 0.5% EV 1.2% prior retail inventories 2.7% EV 6.1% prior. 0830 BR Brazil June total outstanding loans BRL no ESTV 3.596 T prior no ESTV 0.3% prior personal loan default rate no ESTV 5.5% prior. 1000 US June pending home sales 15.0% EV 44.3% prior YY 2.2% EV 10.4% prior. 1030 US weekly dough oil inventories. 1330 BR Brazil June total federal debt BRL no ESTV 4.251 T prior. 1400 US FOMC interest rate decision expected to leave target range unchanged between 0.000.25% expected to leave interest rate on excess reserves IOER unchanged at 0.1%. 1430 US Fed Chief Powell post-rate decision press conference. 1700 KR South Korea OG Business Manufacturing Survey no ESTV 51 prior non-manufacturing survey no ESTV 59 prior. 1845 NZ New Zealand June building permits no ESTV 35.6% prior. 1950 JP Japan June retail sales 8.0% EV 1.9% prior revised from 21% YY 5.7% EV 12.5% prior revised from 12.35. 1950 JP Japan June department store and supermarket sales YY 5.5% EV 16.7% prior. 2100 NZ New Zealand July final ANZ business confidence no ESTV 29.8 prelim activity outlook no ESTV 6.8 prelim. 2130 Australia June building approvals 2.8% EV 16.4% prior private sector houses no ESTV 4.4% prior. 2130 Australia export price index QQ 2.0% EV 2.7% prior import price index QQ 3.0% EV 1.0% prior. 2200 SG Singapore June M2 money supply YY no ESTV 9.5% prior M1 money supply YY no ESTV 21.3% prior bank loans and advances YY no ESTV 0.5% prior. 2200 KR South Korea June department store sales YY no ESTV 7.4% prior. 2205 NZ New Zealand to sell 2025, 2031 and 2040 bonds. 2300 CN China to sell 10-year upsized special government bond. 2335 JP Japan to sell 2-year JGB bond. Subscribe our channel to receive the news as soon as possible. Thank you for watching. If you want to read real-time news, text messages to MT5 Expert Advisors page at https://mt5.expert.advisors.